Help me give a warm County Commissioner's welcome to Justice Harold Melton.
Thank you, Laura, and it's a pleasure to be with you. I see some friends, and first of all, let me congratulate you. As a bureaucrat of 21 years, I feel like I can appreciate the work that public servants provide as service to the citizens of this state of Georgia and to the counties of this state. So I feel like my role is twofold at the beginning of this. I've been asked to talk about civility. So on the front end, my job is to say congratulations, welcome you to the frying pan, and then secondly, ask you not to be so bothered by the heat. But congratulations, I do want to thank you in advance for the service that you are about to render to your citizens, and recognizing that if you haven't already been in leadership, if you haven't already been serving, you wouldn't be where you are now. Thank you, Ross, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be back in Athens. I was wondering how long it would take before I'd hear some barking. And I also want to just congratulate ACCG on your selection of speakers. I was real pleased to hear that Chuck Clay and Kathy Cox were your speakers. I have seen both of them in action. I'm not talking about on TV in action. I've seen both of them in action behind the scenes in small rooms where issues are being discussed, where the spotlight is off, and they are perfect people to be in front of this group. They are perfect ladies and gentlemen at all times. They are statesmen. You would be proud to see them at work. So congratulations, ACG, on that fine selection. Let me ask you a question. This is a history test. Don't get frustrated. This history question. What election campaign were these phrases said about the candidate? Were these phrases said about the candidates? What election campaign was it? One candidate was described as a Puritan pope, a religious tyrant, one who stands foursquare against liberty and progress. That again is a Puritan pope, a religious tyrant, one who stands foursquare against liberty and progress. No? Let me tell you what they said about the other candidate. It gets better. The other candidate was said to be the Antichrist. The new whore of Babylon. A Jacobin infidel. I don't even know what that is. A Jacobin infidel. I know if it ends in infidel, it can't be good. But the Antichrist, the whore of Babylon, the Jacobin infidel. So we have an answer right here. Jefferson Adams, 1796. Jefferson Adams, 1796. It was the first election campaign. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, our four founders. I say that to say that in some respects there's nothing new under the sun. This is always something we've wrestled with in the history of our country. Civility. Our respected powdered wig four founders had these kinds of words to say about one another. Now, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had been friends. Can't tell that by this, but they had been friends. They got to know each other during the Continental Congress, and then over time they had this falling out, and they ended up running against each other very stridently in the first contested election for President of the United States after George Washington had served as president. Now, once John Adams was elected president, they had this controversy, this dust-up involving France, and they had the quasi-war, as they called it, or the Franco-American War. And John Adams actually asked Thomas Jefferson to assist them in kind of keeping the peace, making peace with France. And they were still in hostile territory with one another, and Thomas Jefferson refused to help. And so they became really arch enemies during that time, and even sometime after their service. But in their later years, we know the story, I know this gentleman does. In their later years, they kind of looked back, and I think they had some regrets. They regretted that they didn't do more to work together. They regretted that they didn't do more to work together for the betterment of their country. And I think they also realized that each other really did have the best interests of the country at heart. Even though they disagreed, they really did have the best interests of the country at heart. And so they began writing letters back and forth in their older years as they were both put out the pasture and almost forgotten and had financial problems and such. And then we all know that, well, we might not know the story, but at the end, they both died on the same day, within hours of each other. Almost symbolizing this reunification, this bond. So I think they had their regrets. And their regret was that they didn't work together to solve problems. As you know, this is what you're here for. You, I assume, ran for office because there's some things you want to get done. There's some things you want to accomplish in your community. There's some things that you saw that you think need to be changed, and you want to go about doing that. But you're going to be forced to work with some fellow commissioners. You're going to be forced to work with some staffers and administrators. So how do we do this? Believe it or not, I think lawyers do have something to offer in this category. Lawyers are assigned, I tell school kids this all the time, what lawyers do above all else is we solve problems. We're hired to solve problems. If somebody can't get along in marriage, you go see a lawyer and you work it out, or don't work it out. If you're broke and you can't handle your finances, you go to a bankruptcy lawyer. If you're trying to get a corporation started, you go to a corporate lawyer. You go to a lawyer to solve problems. Well, in Cobb County, where Chuck practices, I think the lawyers there do a very good job of working things out. And we know that across the board, most cases are settled rather than tried, both in criminal and civil cases, both in criminal and civil context. Both cases are settled rather than tried. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Now, what makes that possible? One of the things I think that works in Cobb is that there's a square. And in the square, there's a bunch of restaurants all around it. And at restaurants, there are lawyers eating. And sometimes lawyers are eating with the lawyers that they are litigating against, or they run across each other. But it gives them opportunities to meet and connect and to build working relationships. And it's the working relationships that make all the difference in the world. When I was in the governor's office, I got my education in civility. I saw both good examples and I saw bad examples. I used to watch the feed on the floor, the House and Senate floor. You could see the feed coming in. And you could see people up there grandstanding, pounding the podium, rustling up the feathers, stirring up the dust, throwing rocks. And you could see that, and the public could see that. And a lot of times that's the perception that the public has of our public officials, that idea of really giving them the business. But a couple of things I realized were wrong with that. Sometimes that person didn't even know what they were talking about. Many times they hadn't read the legislation that they were really talking about. What they had read was press clippings about the legislation that they were responding to, or some of the constituent concerns that were raised that may have been well informed, but maybe not. So a lot of times they were grandstanding. So I would ask, was it effective? I would say many times no. Many times folks watching the feed say, well, look at that person just grandstanding. And they would discount what they're saying, unfortunately. It would be discounted immediately. But what I did see was when that very same person came into the office and they sat with the jackets off and nobody else around, and they were able to have a conversation, a totally different conversation took place. The governor was able to say, are you really concerned about this? And the legislator was able to say, yeah, let me tell you why, really, seriously. Here's really what's bothering me about this. And it became a totally different dynamic. It became a totally different exchange. And it became an exchange that ended with one or the other saying, well, let me do this. Let me see if we can work something out on this grounds. Let me have my guy get back to you, always me, because I always had to do this work. But let me have my guy get back to you on that. That would never have happened if not for the sit-down interaction that had taken place. Now, is it true that some people in government are self-seekers? Absolutely. Is it true that some people in government are half crazy? Absolutely. But the main point is, one, nobody in this room should be any of those. And then two, how do we deal with that situation? And so we are called upon, we're all called upon when we see fray to rise above it. Now, many of us in this room have the great gifts of poise and composure and dignity and statesmanship to where you can naturally rise above the fray. It comes to you naturally. For many of us, it's a supernatural work to rise above the fray. It means taking a breath. It means pausing. It means thinking. It means maybe going to somebody and say, what should I do about this joker? How do we get past this? But I will tell you that our citizens, your community, counts on you to rise above the fray to get things done for the betterment of your community. Now, does it matter? Yeah. Does it matter? It matters because every now and then you're going to want your voters to vote on something. You're going to want your citizens to vote for something that gives you more power, more authority over a certain area, whether it's budget or judgment calls in this particular area. And let's face it, the more that you're dealing with local issues, the more you're dealing with personal issues. And the more you're dealing with personal issues, the more things get personal. So people are going to really be looking to you to see whether you're somebody or your commission is an entity that they can trust with this additional power that you're going to be asking for. And we see it all the time. If they don't trust you, the answer is going to be no. If they don't trust you, the answer is going to be no. And the reason why we don't have a lot of trust is because we see so much of this uncivility. So it does matter. One of the things I regret as I look back on my history is how we look back on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. We tend to reduce everything into little bite-sized nuggets, and the bite-sized nugget we have on Dr. King is nonviolent social change and a whole lot of marching. Nonviolent social change and a whole lot of marching. There are a lot more levels to everything that he taught and preached that resulted in nonviolent social change and a whole lot of marching, but just four I want to share with you real quickly. Before any action took place, there are 4 steps that took place. When there's an issue that arose in the community, they followed these 4 steps religiously. And the first step was fact-finding. Can't skip over that. We've got to know what we're talking about. We've got to know our legislation. We have to know what the proposals are. We need to know what the draft ordinance is going to, what it says, what it actually does. And not be arguing about things that isn't in the bill, that isn't in the legislation. I've seen that in the governor's office. People will argue about stuff, and we say, you know, that's not in there. And they say, oh. Fact-finding is the first thing. So once we know the facts, then the second thing, negotiation. Take advantage of those relationships that we have, the opportunity to have open communication. After all, that's what he was fighting for, opportunity to sit at the table of brotherhood. We're now at the table of brotherhood. What are you going to do with it? We have negotiation. We talk about things. If this is a legitimate concern that you have, can we meet your concerns in this way? Can we solve these problems? Can we get past this? Once we get past negotiation, if negotiation didn't work out, then the third step was purification. Now, for the civil rights movement, purification meant getting ready for a beatdown. Realizing that what they were going to do next would likely bring hoses and police and guard dogs and everything else. You had to be mentally, spiritually ready for the next step. And sometimes, even in public work, we do have to take that deep breath that we're talking about. Purification, pause. Let's make sure that my motives are pure, that my motives are right. Let's go in this with the right way. Then, only after those 3 steps were followed, do you get to the 4th step, which was action. Only after those steps are followed do you get to the 4th step, which might be, you know, taking the floor of the commission meeting and talking publicly to the media about these issues. But each one of these steps should be followed religiously. I found that what it looks like in real practice is, again, reading the legislation, reading the proposals, and then reading it early. One of the things I found was when they did read the legislation, read the proposals, a lot of times it was too late in the process. it already gone through committee. It already been presented to the floor. And now somebody wants to grandstand about something they weren't paying attention to, and it's too late. And even if you're successful in drawing that legislation back, drawing those proposals back, you will have spent so much political capital in the process that the next time nobody wants to hear from you again. The best, I was about to say this, but I won't say it because it sounds like I'm making a political statement. I'll say it anyway. The best time to abort is early, okay? I still regret that, I know. But we want to deal with issues early. You want to deal with it early before there's too much capital invested into the proposal. So you read it early, and then you show up with a pencil. If you're really, really serious about solving problems, you get that pencil out and say, well, let's change this word here. Does that do it for you? And I think you will find, I hope you will find that people of good faith will get there. You will get there. You may not have the spotlight on you, but you will be successful in the job that you have taken on. I can't tell you how much I wish for you the best of success as you move forward in your service to your community. And again, thank you for all that you will do, and we look forward to seeing the fruits of your labors for years to come. Thank you so much.